Coming to you live from the Business Radio X studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio. Ready to revolutionize your franchise with AI? Franchise Now empowers franchises with advanced AI solutions, automatic processes, and enhanced marketing strategies. From personalized customer interactions to predictive analytics, we help you harness AI to drive growth and efficiency. Transform your franchise with the power of AI. Visit Franchise Now to learn more and take your business into the future. Now, here's your host.
Welcome back, everybody, to Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley. And today I have with me Todd Bingham. He's the president of Top Rail Fence, which is part of the platform company Homefront Brands, which is really cool. We're going to talk about some cool stuff here today. Todd, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You got it. So I like to, we talked ahead of time and all of us have this journey. Many of us that I talk to on the show have a pretty cool journey. So maybe talk a little bit about how you wound up with Homefront Brands. I know you've been there for a couple of years, but tell me a little bit about what led up to that and now where things are now and where you're headed with that role.
Yeah, happy to do that. Coincidentally, and I know this will take a little bit of time to get to air, so the date will be off a little bit, but tomorrow is technically my 2-year anniversary with Homefront Brands. So exciting milestone for me personally.
Yes.
I started a couple of years ago with Homefront Brands with the purpose of becoming the president of a new acquisition company, which was now titled Top Rail Fence. At the time it was a different name, and we went through a whole naming process and all that stuff. But before that, I was with a company called Stellar Service Brands based out of Waco, Texas. Very similar type of platform of brands. We had 4 brands underneath that umbrella, home service based businesses. So a lot of synergies with Homefront and what we do now. And before that, I actually cut my teeth in the franchising world with a franchise consulting, or what a lot of us call franchise broker network out there, based here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live, many years ago. So I've been in franchising now going on 18 years. And as they say, once you get into franchising, you never get out. And the faces stay the same and only the logos on the shirt change. And that's certainly been true for me. Although I haven't been very many places, it's been only a couple of stops, but that's certainly a true statement for me too.
Yeah, well, and we talked ahead of time, and I normally have the same conversation with most of you guys that I love this industry. I love the concept. And like I said, it's the only real thing I've seen in 30 years of looking at ways to make money that is consistent. Like if you really want to start a good business that works well and serves people well. So that's just been and I think that's part of why we stay where we stay. And there's always something new to do, new brands to build and cool stuff to learn. So maybe that's it. I don't know. But anyway.
It's certainly true in my case. I mean, I have worked for and alongside of some of the most brilliant, nicest, most compassionate people, not only in the business and franchising, but just people that I know in general. And that's what keeps me coming back. We often refer to this as a franchise family, and that oftentimes is very true.
It's an authenticity. I feel like it's a more authentic group of folks. We're all grinding it out in a bit. We're a collection of small players.
That's right.
So a big network of small players, but very, very cool stuff. Anyway, all right. So being brand president, right? Tell me a little bit about how that looks for you. I mean, you coming up on 2 years, so you've been able to kind of lay a foundation and get started with a few things. Obviously, a lot's going on in the world today, and I know you guys are crushing it as a platform and doing lots of stuff. So tell us a little bit about what are you doing as brand president? And what are the key responsibilities and where are you headed? Kind of your vision forward for Top Rail Fence?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think there's a couple of layers to it, actually, at least from my point of view. And because the way I look at this is this: when we acquired the fencing business that is now known as Top Rail Fence, it was brand new. There were no franchisees. There were only the founder location. Or locations, because they had a couple of locations themselves. And becoming a president or any kind of leader, or any just an employee within an emerging brand, a brand that has no franchisees, and at that point, really, Rob, had no system either. Like they didn't really have a franchise system. They had a good idea. They had the workings of a system that was going into place or that they thought would be franchisable. That's a very different role than stepping into the president of a franchise that has 100 franchisees or 150 franchisees or larger. It's a different mindset. It's a different daily routine. It's a different weekly routine, monthly routine, because you're basically creating everything at that particular point. So for me, what started out when we acquired the brand in July of last year, and I joined in August of last year as well. We started right away, rebranding, coming up with new looks, name, feel, colors, etc. That's something you don't do if you join a seasoned or a system that has many franchisees in it. And then we had to start putting together all the supporting documentation, training material, things that you don't necessarily think about. You got to train these people. And then we got to have an operations manual. We got to have, all of these things that maybe the average person doesn't necessarily think about. That has to start, and it has to start right away. And that takes about, I don't know how long that should take. It took us 3 or 4 months. That seemed like lightning speed to me. But we got the brand to a point where we felt comfortable with that if we put franchises in the system, that we could not only support them, but they had a system, they had a way to get customers, they had a way to generate revenue. They had all these ways to actually be a business owner and to be a business, and that has since morphed. We are technically, as we launched to the world in January of 2023, we're only 18, 19 months old in terms as a franchise system, which is pretty young in the grand scheme of things. But we now have close to 60 franchisees and 200 territories awarded. And what I do on a daily basis or weekly basis or a monthly basis is very much different now than it was a year and a half ago. And what a lot of people don't necessarily understand is, when people think about franchising, I'm guilty of this too, is that as soon as you think about franchising, what do you think about? Economies of scale, opportunities, the brand name, and things like that. When you have 2 franchisees, you don't have any of that. And so the challenge of a brand president or any kind of leader, and that goes for the other executives within the organization and Homefront Brands, is you're trying to build all of that. You're trying to act and function and operate like a franchise system with none of the advantages that a franchise system has to offer at that particular point, because you don't have the footprint. You don't have the franchisees to go after, those economies of scale and things like that. So you have to get very creative. You really have to start selling your vendors and the people that you work with on your vision. Okay. And you have to, and for me, I leveraged my background. I leveraged the people that I had worked with in the past. I leveraged our current ownership, and Jeff Duden and Michael O'Driscoll and those people that we surround ourselves with to be able to sell that vision. And you have to get people to take a chance on us like we do with franchisees, right? And so it's the same thing. So, right now and continuing, and even with 57, 60, and nearly 60 franchisees, that footprint is still small. It's bigger than it was, but it's certainly still, kind of minute as it compares to some of the larger franchise systems out there and what we think of and what most people think of with franchise. And so we still battle that every day. I think a lot of people kind of maybe overlook's not necessarily the right word, but it's just not something that pops into their head. And so we battle that on a constant, every single day, week, or month. Is just how do we continue to add value to what we do to the franchisees? How do we support them in the right way? And so my time has come with finding the right people to plug into those positions to support franchisees and help them with their growth. And so far, knock on wood here, we've been able to accomplish that fairly successfully. And I feel really good about our staff. I feel really good about our foundation. Are we perfect? No way. I mean, we're not even close, but we certainly try to be perfect. And we try to make sure that we're doing the right things for our franchisees. That's really important to us. And we truly view this as a franchise family. And so much so that when I talk about family, I talk about some of our franchisees sending us pictures of the newborn kids right when they're born. That matters to me. It just does. We want to make sure that we have a human element to this. It's not transactional. So that's important. And so that's what my kind of life looks like in today's world, is making sure that we have the right people in place, the right infrastructure with those foundations, to be able to have a solid foundation for franchisees to operate on. And then always looking for the new opportunities for them in whatever way that is, whether that is negotiating new prices with suppliers, finding new lead sources for them, new products, new services, whatever that is, that we have to do that now. That will change again, probably in 6 months, or another, 40 or 50 franchisees. That role will morph because you become the brand even becomes different at that particular point. And so, but now, there's a challenge to starting a new franchise, new challenge to starting a business, period.
Yeah.
But a new franchise system, this is really fun. I love talking to franchisees and seeing their success. And we have a lot of franchisees doing very, very well out there in the system. And there's nothing that I care more about than having somebody that creates a life, or they're trying to create a legacy or some kind of generational wealth for them and their families. That's really important to not only to me, but to us at Homefront Brands as well.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, you made a lot of really, really good points. So tell me, in terms of launching a brand new franchise or being the franchisor, starting new. But tell me, so when you're looking at going through this process, obviously you had the opportunity to kind of figure out, how do you weave Homefront Brands into this narrative? How does it add value? Where does it add value? Where should it add value? I'm sure there's things you're working on and all that. But the idea of the platform company, and you guide me, I'm kind of reading into it, but and helping the audience too. But the idea of the platform company is almost like jump starting. Like if you do start a smaller brand, you have these other brands around it that are complementary, that can be synergistic, that might be bigger, but you also have a platform a platform team that also provides that extra layer of support. So again, kind of building in that bigger feel, I feel like, right? The platform companies have a lot of sizable brands, but they're not like mega brands usually. Maybe they are, I don't know. But point is, how does that work? How do you calculate the platform relationship into your value proposition, and how do you use it to differentiate?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I'll kind of go back just a bit. And, when I started in franchising nearly 18 years ago, I don't remember, maybe only one other platform at that time. Okay. So I don't remember there being a plethora of, companies like Homefront Brands. Now that's the norm. It feels like, and it seems like, but I can only think of, right off the top of my head, maybe one at that particular point in time. And maybe they were the pioneers. I don't know, but it's now certainly much more common. But what a platform allows a company like, and I'll just use Top Rail as the example because it's anecdotal, right? Is it gives us the ability to look and act like and function like a larger company. So in theory, when you start your own business, the owner at that particular point usually is not only the salesperson, but they, in our case, might have to be the installer. They might have to be the bookkeeper. They have to be the HR person. They have to be the accountant. They have to be all of those roles. Like they have to be the technology person. Got to maintain your website. Figure out how to market your business. There's a lot of things that you have to do. And that's not necessarily different when you join a franchise. You are the business owner, right? And you do have to do the things that business owners do. But when you join a platform of brands, it gives the franchisor, it gives us more resources because we can share those resources amongst other brands. To your point, we have a couple of full-time technology people that helps with technology issues. You don't necessarily have that if you are a young franchise system that has one or two franchisees. That founder or that owner of that franchise system has to do all of that themselves usually. We have a business office where we have accounting people that allows us to do, be on the forefront of accounting and billing and the things that we do with our franchisees that you wouldn't normally be able to do if you were, a single brand and the founder trying to do those things. We can share marketing resources that, so we actually have a chief marketing officer and some other people that they're in that department that you might not have if you're just a single franchisor and getting this started with a couple of franchisees. So you do have the leverage and the power of scale. And then as a differentiator and something that we actually use as kind of a tool that makes us attractive is we can go do things like, and I'll give you an actual example of this is our financing program that we have set up with one of our financing partners. We normally, the arrangement we have with them would not ever be extended to a single franchisor. But since we have other franchises underneath that Homefront Brands umbrella that also uses that same financing company, we now have, we look like a bigger company. We act like a bigger company, and we're able to get, use a company like what the finance company that we use, consumer financing, that is, meaning our customers are able to, in our case, finance their fences and pay for it over time.
Right.
We're able to have an advantageous relationship with that finance company because of Homefront Brands and because we have other franchisors underneath that umbrella that also use that same finance company. So those are the kinds of things that that benefit us of being a part of Homefront Brands and being a part of that larger organization.
Yeah, they're not, and they're not small things. I think it's a brilliant, and I guess I don't know who the first platform company would have been, but it makes total sense, especially for the emerging brands that are great brands, and they're just a little smaller, right?
Mhm.
It is a little bit about scale at some point, and if you add those other brands together, it positions you differently. So that's amazing. So let's dive in a little deeper to top rail fence. Tell me a little bit about the brand. Like what's unique? Uh, what's the angle? Like what's the model about? Like it sounds like you're installing fences, but tell me more about the business model and the brand.
Yeah. So yeah, just as the name suggests, we're a fencing company, and so we work with consumers, residential, commercial, agricultural, government, all of the above, and install fences. That's the simplistic, version of the model. That's exactly what we think about. You need a fence in your backyard or around your pool. You can, there's usually a couple of fence companies in your area that you could call and come out and do that. And I will tell you, there's not a lot of differentiation between a large franchise system like us and say what we all would call maybe the mom and pop fence companies. We all install fences very similar. Everybody dig holes, puts posts in the ground, attaches, rails and pickets or panels, depending on what kind of material you're using. We all do that the same. I mean, that's really the only way you can install fences. One of the differentiators for Top Rail, I think that's really important. It's been important to our franchisees. Is we have a set of standards, that all of our franchisees adopt. Now it is a little bit regional. I will say that. So certain regions are a little bit different because we're dealing with frost lines up north. We're dealing with sand along the coasts and things like that. But we have a set of standards that has been developed for each region of the country that says we're going to install fences this way. And it is to some certain building standards that are national building standards. And in turn, that allows us to offer a lifetime workmanship and craftsmanship warranty on our work, meaning that for as long as that homeowner has that fence, if something goes wrong, that's not a natural event, meaning the woods. Wood's a natural product, so it's naturally going to bow and crack. We can't warranty that because we'd be out there every 6 months replacing something. So if it's due to installation problems, we will fix it for us, and that is a differentiator in the marketplace. With that. Now, if we do our jobs right, and again, we're not perfect, but if and all the franchisees and all the installers out there, across the country are not perfect either. But if we follow those set of standards pretty closely, you have the odds of you having an issue with the workmanship and the craftsmanship of the installation of that fence is pretty slim, which makes the homeowner a little happy, there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's probably the biggest differentiator. Again, because every fence company, whether Rob, it's you and I going out and installing a fence, we're going to do it the same way. We're going to dig holes, put some posts in there and concrete, and that's how we're going to do it. And everybody else does it that way, no matter where you're at in the country. And so we have to find the differentiators as a brand, and part of that is our the way that we install the fence and the way that we warranty that installation after the fact.
And
And
I think there's something hidden in that too that you're saying that I think shows a lot of integrity, and that is doing work that you know you can stand by behind and knowing the difference. I never thought, like you said, yeah, different parts of the country, sand, colder parts of the country, like there's different considerations. And so, like, I got to believe the mom and pops just are trying to make a living. They're not really thinking about, like, this is a good place to do these types of jobs. But I think that's important. And that just leads to success. You focus on the customers you can help the best. I just think that was probably not, I just wanted to point that out. And I think that means a lot, that you build a business that way.
yeah, and that's been really important to us because, and I will just be honest, I didn't know that when we got into this business. I mean, I had no idea, to be just to right up front with you, because I don't have a fencing background. I have a franchising background, but not necessarily a fencing background. But as as we have franchisees in the Chicagoland area and Minneapolis area, I mean, if for those people that live in those markets, they understand that in December or January, or maybe sometimes even earlier than that, it gets pretty cold and that ground starts freezing. And, so, and there's certain aspects about the install that has to be done specifically for that area. And that's not to say that the mom and pop, fence companies don't do that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we do that. And, we want to make sure that our franchisees understand that. Most of them do. We have significant training on that. There's training. We have an online training library that they can go point their employees to, their installers to. There's documentation that helps with that, installation documentation, installation standards, all of that stuff that we produce. Again, another value add of becoming a franchisee as opposed to trying to go and do something like this yourself.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the buying power, but the training aspects, right? So the business model of installing fence, being a fencing company. So you had mentioned it could be commercial or it could be residential.
Mhm.
What is like the ideal, so if you're running a really efficient fence business, is it you have sort of the certain profile customer that is a good customer, it's lucrative? Is it based on like the size of the fence and I mean, is there a way you kind of guide people in terms of, in other words, I always think about throughput. Like you guys always think about operations, I guess is what I'm saying. Is that you go a little deeper than most, right? You're thinking, okay, not just can we do it well, make great profit, but can we do more of them in a shorter period of time and still do that?
Right.
Like what do you, so like, tell me, how do you look at that consideration? How does one do this at a different level, faster, better, and still not sacrifice quality and profit? Like, I'm sure that's in your model somewhere. I'm just curious how that works.
It's a great question, and to be honest, it's a little bit a part of the secret sauce. There, is that the standards are what they are because that helps us do that a little bit faster. But I'll give you a perfect example, and this is not a secret. Is there's certain methods to being able to set posts, and what I mean by setting posts is once the hole's dug, you can. Let me even take one step before that and say there's two ways to set posts. You can do what they call wet setting or dry packing, which means what you and I think of, or what an average customer thinks of when you put concrete in the ground. What do? You mix it with water and you pour it in and you set it, right? Okay, if you do that, guess what? You got to wait. And so you got to let that concrete harden so that when you're attaching the rails and the pickets and the weight, you don't have any kind of movement. But there's some methods to do what they call dry packing, where you put dry concrete in the ground. You take all the air bubbles out. There's some tools like an agitator that pulls the air bubbles out and kind of sets the powder of the concrete or the quickcrete, down into the hole, and then it just absorbs the moisture, from the ground. But once you pack it tight, there's methods to do that and all that. That post now can be installed on right that minute, and so you don't have to wait. And so there's ways to do, and that's fairly common. That's a fairly common method to setting your post and getting that throughput, as you put it, pretty quick. There's also another method, and it doesn't work in every single market, but it's called post pounding, where you actually don't even dig any holes. You just use a big old pneumatic hammer, throw it on top of the post. You literally hold the strap on with two hands, for good, and it just starts, pushing it down in the ground, and you get it set.
Yeah.
So there's ways to do that as well. And there's some videos online. You can actually watch those post pounders. And in less than a minute, you can get a post in the ground and set and ready to be installed on. and that thing ain't going anywhere, right? Because that ground's not agitated, so the soil's not loose. It's really nice and tight and packed in there. So different methods you could do that, and that's part of what we have franchisees doing both of those methods out there in the marketplace, and allowing us to get more fences. It's basically, how did we get more fences in the ground quicker? I mean, that's just basically it.
I love it. Yeah, I knew it. And I totally just asked that because I knew there'd be a good answer. So I love it. It's like you're getting into stuff. I'm like, wow. And then there was so much detail about digging a post hole.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Most people don't know that there's that much.
Why would you? Unless you're running a franchise network.
Exactly.
Yeah. So very cool stuff. All right. So with the other, I told you I spoke to one of your colleagues and we were talking about some of the other brands. And so in terms of, all right, I want to talk about a little bit about marketing then. So if I'm a new franchisee, I got a fencing business. Before I ask you the other question, I'm going to just talk about the marketing. So what kind of business does that look like? It sounds like could be partially a Google driven sort of, on search engines, people look for fencing companies when they kind of have that interest or need. But tell me more about the marketing model. How do you network? I know there's usually a community and a partnering aspect to things. Plus you've got your own platform brands, but tell me a little bit more about the marketing plan and how guys get started their first year.
Yeah, so you're right. As in most home service businesses, Google is your friend, and you have to play in that pond, or spend your money in that marketplace. You just have to. There's no getting around it. I mean, when the term Google is now used for searching, when like Kleenex, Clorox, those type, when that happens, you have to be in the Google marketplace. You have to spend money with those guys. You have to try to drive digital leads that way. You just have to. There's no getting around it. And every fence company does that. Even the small time fence companies will do that. And we're no different. And so we do recommend a specific spend. There's some, again, part of kind of our formula, if you will, is that we have a certain amount of spend that is to be spent in your marketplace. And there's a mix of that as well. How much of that goes to, say, Google? How much of that goes to, say, maybe a third-party lead aggregator? Because there's other lead sources out there online that do very similar things in say, the Google world as well, or digital world. And so we will talk to you about a mix of those. How much money do we spend here? What dollars do we have here? And get that marketing plan set up for you. But one of the differentiators really with not only just Top Rail, but our Homefront brands is something that we call the 90-day sprint. It's something that we talk about early. We talk about this in Meet the Team Day. When a candidate comes to meet us in our office in Charlotte, or specifically Huntersville, North Carolina, we talk about the 90-day. We used to call it a 90-day plan. Now we call it the 90-day sprint because we want you to sprint to success. And part of that is, we talked about this just a little bit earlier on this, as a business owner, right? You have to go, unless I use this analogy. I have no idea if it's a good analogy or not, but it sounds good to me. But, unless you have the big golden arches outside your door, nobody walks up and just hands you money. They just don't.
Yeah.
Right. So people have to know you exist in the marketplace. And so part of our 90-day sprint is local networking, local business development. That is connecting with local networking groups, centers of influence in your community, looking for referral partners. Okay. And we've outlined all of that for you. That's part of this little, if I had a booklet of paper laying around, I'd hold it up and say, this is your plan, because that we actually do have it in like printable format. We can create a booklet out of it, believe that or not. Because some people just like the checklist, and so we've outlined that for you that says, if you do these tasks each week for the first 12 weeks of your business, we can't guarantee you'll be successful. But we certainly give you a nice runway and a path to being successful. I equate this to like the bowling alley. Okay. When you're a kid, you put up the bumpers, we're throwing up the bumpers and we're just trying to keep you within them to get you down to the end through the first, 12 weeks. And that's the 90-day sprint is really that goal. Now, the idea behind this is if you do this successfully and you create these referral partners, and you connect with and you network with the centers of influence within your community. The idea is that before 90 days is up, you're too busy to be able to continue to do this every single day. And that's really what we're looking for. And then, every business has ebbs and flows. I mean, they just do. Especially when you start out, you'll have the good times, you'll have times when it's a little harder than others, or it's a little leaner than others. That happens. And so we always say, even if you're 6 months in or even a year in now, as we have a few franchisees, go back to the 90-day plan. Go or the sprint. I even get caught up calling it the plan because that's what we called it for a while. But go back to that 90-day sprint. Revisit all of those activities that you were doing. Fill that time, with those activities. And I think there's a person on our team that kind of really preaches the 90-day sprint. His name's Chris, and Chris always talks about paid activities and non-paid activities. And I love it because the paid activities are that networking, those things that you're doing to generate revenue for your business. If your business is slow, what do you need to be doing? Go back to doing the activities that make you money. And that is networking. That's calling on referral sources. That's visiting, that's knocking on their doors. In our case, say a pool company or something along those lines, go connect with them. Take them cookies or donuts or coffee or lunch one day or something along those lines, and start continuing to nurture those referral partners. So that's a really and truly a differentiator with what we do. We focus on it. We have a training class on it, but as you're going through the onboarding process, we talk about it in-person training. And then it's a part of our first 90 days afterwards. We talk about it each week with each franchisee. So that's a differentiator. And that's really, those two items, the digital and then the local in-person networking and marketing, is the two keys that I see that is the most successful activities that you can do for that business, for your business in your local market.
Yeah. And I think that goes back. I don't think it was you that I spoke to about community, but I think franchising as an industry is I believe, going to be a big influencer on the way we live in the future. Like, I feel like we're going to need community. We're going to need connection. And it's important that you have that opportunity to build a business and then connect with other businesses. And I think all of us naturally in our hometowns, we care about our hometowns and we care about our businesses in our hometowns. So franchising kind of leads the way with that sort of pride of local ownership and your local town. So I think it's really important. So not only as a marketing strategy does it give you diversification, not to put all your eggs. You need Google right now. Who knows what happens with Google years from now? I don't know. I know they're not going to just disappear totally, but you don't want to put all your money into anything that's, well, we all know that the digital platforms have their rules. And you can certainly you could change your situation, right? One week you're doing pretty good. Next week, your campaign's not delivering the same result. Of course, you can respond to that. And I know your team probably always does, or your vendors always do, but you don't have control over that. Whereas on the other side, what you described, you really do have control over that. You could decide, I'm going to go out and meet every key player that's related to home services in this space. We're all going to be buddies. You know what? They all want. And that's what I tell people. You don't have to keep doing it, right? I kind of coach similar coaching, right? When it comes to building these relationships. And when you're a business owner, you only have to do it really once. And then if you get big enough, you might have to repeat it to scale. But you don't have to do it forever. But every sales team in America that can afford a sales team and pay a sales team trains them to reach out and do the very same things. Mm-hmm. And so it works. Yeah. The great thing as a business owner is you don't have to do it forever. You just go, like you said, go out, get the key relationships, do the 90-day sprint, and you might not need them again. You might have to backfill. But the point is, it really is it's an exciting thing because you have control. You can decide. I believe there's a ton of business when you can build up referral partners and you become their, that's it. We don't work with any other fencing company, right? That's it. And that's all you got to go do. So anyway, I think that's a brilliant sentiment, but I think it's so critical to understand that if you build a business like that, it's super stable for the future.
Yeah, I agree.
So in terms of the other brands though, all right, so we're talking about partnering and networking and kind of using other people's audiences, if you will. Tell me a little bit about the synergies. How do you think about that? I know you have a conference that you do where everybody comes, and franchisees of one brand meet franchisees of other brands. But tell me a little bit in your mind, like how are you thinking about the other brands? How does it help you? How do you think I gotta put this together and help both brands? I mean, is there any ideas on how you guys can synergize or what you're thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, at least on a personal level, everything that I do with the anticipation. Not only will it help Top Rail, but can it be implemented? Can this be a vendor or supplier or a system or something that the other brands use as well? So, and I think the other presidents within Homefront Brands do very same thing. I mean, you said you talked to one of my colleagues. That particular person, we talk almost daily. And then there's a couple of the other brand presidents we talk regularly as well. But we're always sharing ideas. I've learned so much from the other presidents. I hope that I've given something back to them as well. But I've learned so much from them. And we get together at least once a month in person in Charlotte, in the office, tell some war stories, and then but we also talk about or ask questions and talk about the things that maybe we're facing or we're challenged with, and just get ideas. Right? There's other smart people in the room. Why not leverage those people? And so I really like being able to bounce ideas off people. Because sometimes, and speaking of the person you was talking about earlier, I'll call him up and I'll say, all right, tell me I'm crazy or tell me I'm not crazy. And I'll run something by him and say, am I thinking about this the right way or not? And, he may go, well, sometimes he'll say, yes, you are. And let's explore that. Or, well, maybe you need to think about this as well. And so I think, and this goes back to maybe a question we talked about a few minutes ago is, what's the inherent value from being part of Homefront Brands? That's also part of it, right? I'm able to tap into a genius network of sort, and be able to bounce ideas off of people and really take those back to the brand. That's been really helpful for me on a personal level. I also feel like it's also been a little bit helpful for the brand as well, because we've been able to take some of those best practices and ideas from others and implement those, or again, help keeping me from jumping off a ledge if I've got something on on my mind that I'm just trying to rationalize, and I go because we all get emotional, right, about certain things.
Absolutely.
And it does it helps to be able to talk that out with somebody that kind of doesn't have a dog in the fight. Maybe they do a little bit, but they can be they can not be impartial to the answer that they give, and it's really, really helpful in my opinion.
Oh, the light bulb just went crazy when you were talking. I mean, in a normal franchise brand, the franchisor, the president, founder, the CEO, he doesn't have what everybody else has. But you put him in a platform brand, now he does. You've got other comrades, right? Other presidents, other CEOs, other C-level folks. And that is extremely important. And you think about the concept. The concept would be there's actually franchise brands that are involved, called Vestige and the alternative board. And this is so that business owners can interact, CEOs can get input from one another. And these aren't even brands that are aligned. These aren't even the same brands, right? Mm-hmm. So like the impact of creating an entity like a platform company can't be understated. I don't think the value of you being able not to jump off the ledge, right? That's important. We don't want that would impact the brand if you jumped off a ledge. So that helps. But yeah, no, I mean that you have, counterparts on either side of you to talk about they have different skill sets. But they're at that level of leadership. They understand the problems. They understand the scale. That's unique. You're not going to get that unless you go get it, unless you go decide to invest in that, like a Vistage International, which is a networking, for CEOs. So, and a great concept. I mean, not saying anything about it. I'm just saying it costs significant investment to get access. And so you guys have built a model that enables that. So that again trickles down to everybody, benefits everybody. Good stuff. So I want to kind of follow that up then. I want to ask you this. Since we know the franchise industry is consolidating in a sense, we know this has been happening a while. The platform companies are more popular. There's more of them. I don't know how many. I know I probably counted at one point there was 75 I had on a list. I literally was building
A lot. It feels like a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot. That was a couple, 2, 3 years back. So anyway, we know that this is sort of the trend. What advice might you give a franchisor, a guy like you, president, but he's got his own brand, and maybe he's even considering, maybe he's even being called by a platform organization. What advice might you give about that transition and what that looks like for him?
Well, I mean, I certainly think you're right in the fact that a lot of franchise companies, and not even franchise companies, a lot of businesses now that are looking to franchise their business are being contacted by these platform brands or equity companies or something along those lines in order to get them into the franchising space. I think one of the biggest advice I could give is look for people at that. If we're talking about platforms here, and I think we'll focus on that because that's kind of the theme here is the platform of brands. Is look for people that's at that platform. Look for that leadership, that ownership that has the similar values that you do. I know that at least in our, I was not a founder of this brand, but I do know the founders very well and actually have become very good friends with them. I consider them friends. I hope they consider me friends, because we talk quite a bit and we work together quite well. Is that they found somebody and Whole Front Brands that shared their values and their long-term, not only long-term goals, but even short and medium-term goals, because that's important too. Um, if you don't have the same short-term goals, but the long-term goals, then you'll never get to the long-term goals. Because you don't align on the short-term goals. And if you have, you can't align on the long-term goals, the short-term goals may not matter, so you got to look for alignment. This is me personally, because that's what I do when I was on the verge of joining the Homefront Brands. I wanted to know, if my personality, the way that I viewed franchising and franchisees aligned with that leadership, and it did. I mean, 100%, and still does. It's, we have great leadership in Jeff Duden and Michael O'Driscoll and that executive team of Carrie Beeman, our chief marketing officer, that we're all aligned. Do we always agree? No, we don't, but we're all aligned in what we want to do for our franchisees in the short term, medium term, and long term. There is alignment there. That's really, really important, at least in my opinion. So if I'm a young franchise company or even not a franchise company and I'm looking to become a franchise or join a platform of brands, I look at, will I fit in with that leadership or ownership? Are our goals the same, not only in the long term, but the short and medium term? And if those all align, and then the dollars are right, that has to be right as well. And all that is right, then, there's a good chance that you can succeed by having that brand join those platform of brands.
Well, I think it's a big consideration, right? And I think that is what seems to be, in my experiences and talking to people, that is like the first thing on their mind is are these folks the same as me? Will they take my brand forward? And I think that happens a lot now. There's a lot more of it going on. And as you said, it goes direct. It's not even like sometimes it's just brand new concept and they want to get behind it. And so it's a new approach to franchising, but one that I think helps everybody that wants to be involved. So at the end of the day, it just is a benefit. Keep delivering the value. I said, like I said, I don't know what the stat, I won't say the stat, but it's a high stat in terms of comparing starting a franchise business with another kind of business. So you got to keep evolving so that we can keep making people successful. That's how I'm looking at it. But good stuff. So before I let you go, can you share the websites where folks, if they would be interested with your brand directly, Top Rail Fence, or maybe checking out the whole platform and seeing the other brands too? You want to share those websites so that they can find that?
Yeah, you can certainly go to toprailfence.com, and that'll take you to the Top Rail Fence website. You can also view homefrontbrands.com. That is the website that has information about all of the brands underneath the Homefront Brands umbrella. It also has some information about the executive leadership and in the brand leadership as well. So about the people we are, and when it gets right down to it, we are a people company. And so we want to highlight some of the people as well here. So that's all that information's on homefrontbrands.com. And of course, the information about toprailfence.com.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that, Todd. And you're authentic guy. And I appreciate the straight scoop on things. I hope to have you back because I know you guys are going places. I know you probably had a few more brands under that home front. There's a whole lot you could do. Throwing in some drones. We mentioned drones on another episode. You could dial into that one. But just saying these guys are doing some innovative things. But thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it, Todd.
Yeah, Rob, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.